So guys, it's official. The EV market has crashed. Just look at Porsche's Taycan. It starts at around about 100 to 110,000 pounds. And now there are over 700 of these cars on the used market, starting as low as in the 40,000s. And this was the best of electric cars with the most demand and the best residual values. And when you go to even more expensive models or brands with cheaper electric cars, the news only gets worse. The buyer is getting smarter. You guys are getting smarter on how much these cars are worth going longer into the future. The UK government might tell you it's Mr. Bean's fault, which is ridiculous. No, it is actually us getting smarter. Now, let's not be naive. Just because the market is readjusting to where we think the prices should be on these cars doesn't mean that EVs are on the way out. Rather, this is a good time to buy a good EV, which brings me on to the EV series that I've hated on the most in this channel, and that is Mercedes EQ series, specifically the EQE base model car. Now, there's no series of cars that I've blown up more than the EQ series of cars, because I'm not a big fan of their design, either inside or out, or what they stand for. However, that being said, the EQE is actually a range monster, capable of doing almost 400 miles in the summer on a single charge. And having lived with it now for 3 months, my eyes have kind of opened to the things that I actually really like about this car, and they've opened to the things that I dislike about them as well. But I wanted to bring this report to you, particularly at this time, because this is the time, if you're going to get an EV, to buy one. Because I do believe EVs still have a place in our stables, particularly when it comes to keeping costs down. Now guys, the true test of an EV is having it over a long period of time, because your typical 1 week car journalist bash around a few roads does not give you the experience of living with these things. So I've had this EQE 300, which is almost in its base spec in the UK, for the last 3 months. So this is the EQE 300 AMG line, and this is a rear-wheel drive car with a single permanently synchronous electric motor on our rear axle, paired to a 90.6 kilowatt battery, which is smaller than EQS and much more akin to Taycan in size. That gives us 241 brake horsepower, which sounds slow, but in reality of actually using this car was pretty damn decent, and you'll see that later. And more interesting is, of course, the range, which is up to 400 miles in the summer. And for me, it genuinely was. And we'll talk more about the range, summer versus colder months, as I managed to have it through both later in the video. So stay tuned for that, it's really fascinating. Now, the EQE 300 can cost anywhere from £68,000 all the way to £86,000, depending on the package that you choose. So very much like Taycan, in the sense that it can be cheap if you option nothing, but if you option everything, it can be very, very expensive. Your base model car has the standard body with the patterned grille, small wheels, still the same horsepower and range, etc., but less kit inside, and that goes all the way up to the Premium Plus, and I'll fill you in on what you get in that. As you can see here, has almost everything in it, and that is the one that's up to 86k. Now that's a lot of money for an EV. And as I said, used market at the moment, you can see EQEs, just like Taycan, sitting at around about the 40-something thousand mark. Easily you can pick them up now. So if you want to do that, you can go ahead. But if you want a new one and you want to, get all the benefits that you can corporately, tax-wise, etc., again, it's a great time to buy, because Mercedes are doing some proper deals on these now. 0% in terms of finance as of this video. One other issue that the EQE will face, particularly at that price range, is that it's so close to the price of the brilliant E-Class Hybrid, which starts at around about £70,000. And I love this car. 70 miles of electric range in reality, with a combustion engine as well, and a much better exterior and interior. Bear this in your mind when you're watching the rest of this video. Now, it doesn't just stop at that EQE 300 costing 86k. You can actually go for the full-on EQE 53, which I tested during this time as well. We're going to talk about a little bit about that car in this video. Now, of course, this car much more expensive at £114,000 in this one that I tested. And to be fair, loads changed under the skin. It's 626 brake horsepower in its standard version. You can get a version higher at 687. 1,000 Newton meters of torque, crazy 0 to 60 figures. And then you got things like AMG sound experience as well to make the whole thing a little bit more exciting. But the downside to this really expensive car is that, first of all, it looks almost identical to our EQE 300, doesn't it? like really, really similar, just the grille is different. Every other part is almost identical, which kind of shows, to me at least, the hesitation of AMG not really putting both feet in to this particular generation of electric AMGs. And it's also a heavy old car at 2.6 tons versus an equivalent Taycan at 2.3, which is kind of what our standard EQE 300 weighs. And finally, range. Range is actually really similar to the Taycan, around about 240 miles. So that's your 53, and we're going to talk about these two ends of the spectrum within this video. Now, let's check out the range and the practicality, because I have a lot to tell you of what I experienced over these 3 months between summer weather and winter weather. Now, the best part of living with the EQE is actually the space that it has on offer. One thing that you do gain for having the design the way that it is lots of space, particularly in the interior, where you've actually got a huge passenger cell, one that is larger than the previous generation W213 E-Class. And when you get the panoramic roof as well as it is in our car today, it's really airy. So lots of shoulder room, lots of leg room. And you can even see with the car seat, look how much room the little one still has. In fact, let's prove that to you and bring him in here and ask him what he thinks of this car. And here's one that I prepared earlier. Do you like this car? No? Which one do you like? The yellow one. You like that one? Yeah. What about this one? I like it. I like white and yellow. Well, there you go, folks. He likes the C63 Black and the M3 CS. I'm sorry, I tried to make a point, but the little man is clearly not interested. Well, that was a complete failure of a experimentation, but at least he's honest. You know, if you hear him say something on the channel, he's going to be very honest. But yeah, loads of room in here and pretty much standard Mercedes-Benz. The only thing against it now is when you compare this to the newer E-Class, it's starting to look a little bit simple, whereas that car has a lot of character in the rear as well. So just something to bear in mind, that these EQ cars, again, kind of going the Tesla route, all about simplicity rather than the flourish of design that you traditionally associate with a Mercedes-Benz. And of course, we'll get onto the front properly in a minute in terms of the screens, etc. It's been much more heavily documented with the hyperscreen rather than this more simple one, which I actually think is much better and it's something you should save your money on. Furthermore, in terms of practicality, you get nothing in the front. There's literally no frunk. You cannot open this at all. And again, you have to kind of look at this horrible gap with the rubber going through it. I just don't like that part of the EQE. I can't understand how they got away with that. But yeah, many EVs now starting to make use of the frunks rather than having them completely sealed. And I think they've kind of missed a trick here on the EQE. Now, popping open the boot. Again, a really good sized boot within here. It's always got my pram in there. So you can see, even with the pram, it swallowed it whole. Lots of space still available, including with your electric charging cable that comes with the car. And yeah, that's a really decent sized boot with a decent aperture. Though it must be said, versus the previous gen 213 E-Class, it's got less boot space. So we're at 430 litres versus over 500 in that car. So while it's pretty decent for an EV, it's by no means the top of the table when it comes to this same size of normal Mercedes-Benz car. Now, range, the most important topic on the EQE. And as you can see here, even at around 50%, we're nearing 200 miles. And this car consistently saw around about 380 miles in the summer months, which is amazing. So, charging. Here's my charger, 7 kilowatt one. You can see we've got these LED lights here, and when we plug it into the EQE, first it starts with our standby light, which is orange, and that shifts to then the blue light. And the use of lights is actually brilliant because it's actually so much more obvious in this than something like a Taycan or most other electric cars which have a little blinker. This has these lights, and your ambient lighting on the inside as well glows the same color as the lights in here, which gives you a really good indication of whether your car's charging or not. Just not by standing next to it, but if you're looking from, say, inside your house window, you'd be able to tell that this is charging all the time. Now, in terms of how long it takes to charge this on a relatively slow charger like my one at home, which is just 7 kilowatt, you can see on the EQE 53, we're looking at about 13 hours when the car is almost empty. So that's actually not too bad when you think you'll just plug it in overnight. And I've found this to be okay with all the EVs that I've owned. Now guys, the charger that I use at home is a 7 kilowatt charger, as I said. And a full charge on the EQE will cost around about £20 to £25, which is brilliant when you consider the amount of miles you're getting in the summer just off a slow charger like this one. If I was to go to a fast charger like Ionity or any of those brands, PP Pulse, etc., these days, it could cost you almost £90 on those fast chargers. You'd be getting more range out of my C63 Black Series for the same money spent than you would out of charging through one of those providers. It's insane. And where are the fair price regulators when it comes to companies ripping people off like this? But there are times where you simply do need to use an outside charge, particularly on longer journeys. And how to find one that's free and how to find one within your journey are my most key things that I've found in the 6,000 miles that I've had this car. And Mercedes' intelligent navigation has been the best I've seen in any manufacturer. So guys, let's say for example that we want to go somewhere far away, like Manchester is a good 3-4 hours from me. So we'll type in Manchester. So as you can see, it's a total trip of just under 200 miles. And as you can see, we've only got 120 miles range in the winter at the moment. So what it's done is it's picked out a charging spot on the route, which not a lot of manufacturers do, believe it or not, okay? And that's so useful because it plans your journey ahead for you. And if we go into charging stations here, it will give you all of the charging stations on the route. For example, we can see on the map here, we've got one here, which has 2 unavailable. We've got 150 kilowatt here with 5 out of 6 of its available ones, and that's up to 150 kilowatt, which is great. We can use the fast charger on this car. So absolutely loads of information in terms of finding chargers on your route. And that I found to be immensely useful when planning for longer trips. And like I said, not every manufacturer does it, but Mercedes do it really well in their navigation. So guys, here we are inside your EQE 300 interior. You still get the nice intro screen as you do in all of the Mercedes cars, even though this is not the swanky hyperscreen. Now, you would have seen EQE and this hyperscreen thing so many times, but this is the basic screen. And I actually think this is the better one. But to explain that, we're first going to jump into the EQE 53 and check out the fully loaded version of the EQE, and then come back to this. So this is your fully loaded EQE, and the AMG version is really the best one to show you that. I want to show you kind of the top level before we go back down to what I think is actually probably a better solution overall. And let me explain why that is. In the top level EQEs, you get this, which is called the hyperscreen. Undoubtedly, you guys have heard about this by now. And essentially, they say it's like one big screen. It's not. It's 3 separate screens that are trying to act like one big screen. And it's a lot of screens, first of all, which, you know, a lot of us get put off about. But ignoring that, because they actually work really well, the issue that I have with this, I want to compare it directly to the standard one you can see from that side, is that with the hyperscreen, you get this huge amount of bulk because it needs a cowl to stop the glare from happening. You can see how much glare is happening from that camera area now. There is a load of glare that would happen if you did not have the cloak over this. And because you have the cloak, the way you look at it, and I'll show you this in first person in a minute, it's almost like you've got a mountain in front of you. Whereas you compare it to the standard car, it's like the new E-Class, it's like the SL, it's like the S-Class, it's got its own screen, and it sits lower because you haven't got a giant piece of dashboard sitting over it. It's still not perfect. Like the E-Class does it so much better. But just structure-wise, you see a bit more of the car in front or the road in front of you, which is so much more useful. Now, this is your first-person view. See lots of glare over there. This is the hyperscreen. You can see what I meant about the mountain in front of you. That's head height. For me, I can't see anything over that, right? Really, it's all of this. And the hyperscreen is massive. So kind of when you're sitting here, to get to that, to the other side is quite a stretch, especially if you imagine you're driving and you're trying to like get over there. And this is a problem that you won't have with the standard screen, which is another reason why I like it. And I'll show you that as we get into that car. But yeah, first of all, the bulk of it, I'm not a fan of. And the system itself, really easy to use. You go into comfort, you got massaging seats, which is great. You see, this is the other side of EQE that you won't find in the 300. Very much S-Class, so loads of massages available. And other great stuff that I've missed in the normal car, simple things like 360-degree camera, which is so useful because it is still a large car, and to have something like this is really quite good. That's the type of stuff that I end up missing in the standard car. Then we have the passenger screen on this side, but I don't understand the point of it. Yes, you can go in here and like you've got Zinc video streaming, gallery, a few little games here and there, but really are you going to do that? Aren't you just going to use your phone? I don't understand any manufacturers doing this. I've seen no one who's made good use of it. Why use any of the normal car settings? The bloody thing's right there.
Why? I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to use that because it's normal. I don't get it. I really, I don't understand. Just leave it on the wallpaper. It's better. Or what I found as an AMG driver, you know, shove on one of the really cool displays and leave that on there rather than, you know, letting the passenger mess around with some nonsense. The other very AMG thing which is cool, of course, are drive units here where you can change driving mode, which is a lot better than in the 300 where you have to press the silly dynamic select button. Here it's safer, and you can even do your other settings like AMG dynamics, sound of the vehicle, etc., all available at your fingertips, which is great. The screens are slightly different. So I'll first show you the unique ones that you get in the AMG, then we'll see the 300 ones later. And the unique one is, of course, as you've seen in the big petrol ones, called Super Sport. This is a cool one. It's a unique AMG one. You get loads of different readouts. You get some really quite interesting animations going on in there when you're driving in terms of pulsating energy and all that kind of stuff. And this area is ever so slightly different. Here you've got the start button here on the AMG one, whereas on the 300 it's over there, which confuses me when I'm coming between the two cars. And then you've got a few other things like your fingerprint reader that we haven't got on the other car, 360 camera, and your AMG buttons. This is essentially basically the same in both of them, although it's configured a little bit different. Enough space for fruit as well. Apple from a Falterbach. So guys, that's your AMG interior, which is essentially like top level spec EQS interior. So it's all about the luxury and the tech for me, I think, if you're going for the top level EQEs or indeed the 53. It doesn't feel like, you know, I've jumped into a 63 AMG or anything apart from these. But the base car is really good, and I really want to show you that because I think it's the way to go. So you're not really losing much here in terms of what you get, but you do lose that bulk at the top, and I'm so appreciative of that because it just feels like a more normal Mercedes-Benz with a bit better visibility and a singular screen here which looks really good. And you don't really lose anything in terms of the navigation and the apps, etc., that you have within these cars just by going to the lower one. You still have the same basic ideas. For example, so you still got store, you still got all the apps in here like the games, YouTube, video streaming, etc. You haven't lost any of that. And indeed, in this car, we've got the ambient lighting, so you get all of those options in terms of monochrome or the multicolor. So you don't lose that. You still have all that theatricality, and I'll show you more of that later because it's really cool. In fact, better than all that, you get these buttons at the bottom here, whereas in the 53 they were down here. You've got your normal start-stop button here, and you've got your dynamic select, etc. All a bit more reachable, I feel, in this area. The only thing I'm missing out on is 360-degree camera. Then you come to our main driver's own screen here, and it's not like you've lost things here either. You've still got the same designs. My favorite is understated, and I'll show you that while we're driving because it's so cool. You've got sport, which is a bit more AMG-like. We've got classic, which is the classic Mercedes-Benz, and then full screen navigation, assistance, etc. All there, just like you found in the other 53 car. Now, let's go for a drive. I want to give you some feedback on what it's been like to drive and live with and the whole luxury experience, which is really, really important for this car. And I'll fill you in a little bit on the EQE 53 as well. Guys, I tell you, my family's been so bummed out by the fact that this car is leaving. I never would have expected it because they don't usually, they're so used to press cars coming. But this one, because it's such a luxurious car to live with, they really appreciated it. And I kind of understand it, and I'll impart that to you as best I can. But before that, I want to talk a little bit about what it was like living with the £120,000 EQE 53. As you can imagine, that car is ridiculously fast in every scenario and quite dynamic actually. All of those AMG ride control suspension elements, etc., really making a huge, huge difference versus this car. I mean, one is a wafty luxury car and the other one does feel more like a performance car, but still nowhere near the Taycan, and I must qualify that. You know, the worst aspect of driving that car as an AMG was the fact that it doesn't look like an AMG. Because I'd be driving past like Gussim Uncle in his Prius on the side there, and it's the one time where I've not got a smug face driving an AMG next to a Prius. That's how bad it is. Instead, it's not really the AMG side that I felt was a plus point in the 53. It was more the addition of the luxurious elements. So we've got the lovely ambient lighting. I can turn the massaging seats on as well. We've got driver's assistance package, so I can just let the car self-drive, which was great for longer journeys as well. HUD giving me all the information I want, really quiet inside the car, but I've got the electric sound telling me what's going on, which I found really great as well.
Traffic light assist was one thing that I really missed. Once you get used to it, it's really nice to be able to see the traffic light that is hidden behind your A-pillar. So it wasn't really the AMG side that stood out for me, it was more the luxurious side. And of course, like I said, you can go to the Premium Plus car in this EQE 300 and get all of those options, including the rear wheel steer, including the driving assistance, the electric sound. All of these things can be had in that car as well. Now let's focus on this car. Yes, you've got a lot less power and speed than the EQE 53, but as I highlighted, I don't actually care that much, because although this is so much less power, in reality, when you're using this car, because it's an EV, you get all of the power immediately. So for daily duties, which is what's key today, I think it's absolutely fine. All I'd want to do is maybe increase the luxuries a little bit, but it's not necessary. I've lived 5,000 miles with this, and what I appreciate more is the silence. It's just completely silent in here. It's really, really luxurious in that regard. The other great thing is the suspension. It feels like you're driving a car from the class above. Modern suspension systems are so good that even in this base level EQE 300, it's so supple. The steering is nice and light, which is nice for a luxurious car. Everything about it ticks the box of a quiet, smooth, luxurious car. It's not like you've got a combustion car where you've got perhaps a smaller engine in your entry-level version that's slow to react and it's a bit noisy, etc. No, the EV will give you power immediately. It will give it to you quietly as well. And as we saw, it's giving us fantastic range versus all the rivals in summer and in winter. So as a daily car, it was a win-win. I was not having range anxiety as I would in my Porsche Taycan, and that's so important for a daily EV. Now, if we do compare to Taycan for a minute, one thing that I love is that Mercedes EVs retain the paddle shifters for your recuperation modes. And it's great because it's so natural for the petrol heads to use. So when I downshift, I go into a stronger recuperation mode. As you can see here, it says strong recuperation. But when I upshift, it releases it into normal recuperation or into no recuperation. And what happens is you get into a natural flow of driving where, like in a combustion car, you would downshift to reduce speed, and I would do that with strong recuperation as I'm coming into a turning, and then release it into no recuperation and the car glides. So it's a really natural way that we are all used to using the paddles. So hats off to Mercedes in that regard. They've nailed the controlling of recuperation using something that we love, which is paddle shifters. Of course, your strongest recuperation mode, which is strong, is one pedal driving basically, and if you like that in EVs, you can have it. And they've got another one where you hold the plus button and you get intelligent recuperation, which does the best of both worlds. Now, one of my favorite driver zones and ambient lighting things while driving was understated. You would pop this on and you could choose the color that you want of the ambient lighting, and it would mimic that in the screen in front and change the ambience of the whole car. But it was so nice because it was less numbers, less info on the screen, etc. Just a nice driving experience, a nice luxury experience, which I think is actually the best part of the EQE. It is a really good Mercedes Benz, other than the looks. The way I now look at the EQE, having lived with it, is it's this great luxury Mercedes Benz pod that you kind of sit in. For the most part, it's so easy to drive that it kind of drives itself. You've got all these different ambiences of the interior, all the tech around it that you find in your best Mercedes-Benz cars, and you got great range. So as a luxurious, quiet and comfortable Mercedes-Benz, it really does hit the mark really well, and that's why it's been such a hit for us to live with. All in all, we've got a car that is a genuine range monster in this class, and perhaps in the class above. It's super quiet, it's luxurious, it's comfortable, it's got all the tech that your modern Mercedes-Benz have. If it was me personally, I would hunt for a good deal on a Premium Plus car with the multi-spokes and a different colour and all those additional things that add so much to your life. So guys, I've really enjoyed living with the EQE. I hope this whole video was useful if you're thinking about getting one as well. It's a great luxury Mercedes-Benz daily. If you've enjoyed this episode of RBR, please do like and subscribe. As always, it's hugely appreciated. I'll see you guys next time.